Welcome to the Adoption Curve, the show where we explore how leading organizations are transforming their approach to turn technology adoption into a strategic advantage. In each episode, we'll sit down with a learning and enablement practitioner to get their inside story on how they're helping their organizations adopt and maximize their technology investments. Let's dive into today's episode. Yasmin, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. Really looking forward to this conversation. Your name's been brought up a couple of times with a few other folks in the industry through ATD and a few other events. And you were recommended as a good subject matter expert for some of this stuff. So we're looking forward to this conversation today. As a way to kind of get introduced, love to just better understand, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into this L&D space, and a bit about where you are now.
Well, thank you for having me first. My background, I've always been in learning and development. I consider myself a lifelong learner. Background started, I actually went to school for international relations, and I was very adamant that I wanted to get into diplomacy. Come to reality, when I graduated, it wasn't that easy to find a job in diplomacy, especially in a foreign country. So as I was looking for opportunities, an opportunity came up to work as an instructional designer. I think we have a lot of reference from other team members saying that you get into instructional design by mistake or by accident. So I think that was happening. I had the opportunity to join as a very junior instructional designer and learn the trades throughout the years. The reason I got the job without, right out of school is because I had a very keen, I had the audience always in mind. So when they were asking me about things, I'm like, how would you reframe this? How would you design this? Everything that I was answering was with an end user in mind. Well, what type of language are we using? What type of visuals are we using? Are we getting them to where they need to get to where we want them to get at the end? So as I worked through my years in the industry, I got the chance to be exposed. I always said yes. If there was a challenge and I was asked if I wanted to participate, or if I wanted to learn something new, I always say yes. So through my years in the industry, at one point I was an LMS administrator because somebody quit on the job on the spot. At one point they needed to create simulations for a new software. So I said, why not? Let me jump in and create simulations. At one point they needed measurement and evaluation, and I love data. So I was like, please let me try it. So I got the chance to jump and grow my career in different aspects because I was always willing to say yes and try new things and be open to learning, which I think is the first thing that you need to have. If you're in learning and development, the first trait is to be a lifelong learner. You never stop learning. What I will tell you is the only one I never raised my hand for was to be a trainer. That is a special skill set that I do not have. And I applaud everybody who can stand in a room in front of somebody for hours and teach them something. So anything around it, I was able to practice and get it done. And that got me to where I am now in my current role. So in the current role, I lead our team members working on, if you think, on the back end support of our learning function. So my team oversees the instructional design world, all the assets that we get to create for our experiences that we design for the organization, the learning tech stack, so the support that we provide to our learners, all the logistics and the backend support as well, and then the new stack that I'm building right now, which is measurement and evaluation, that is near and dear to my heart. So yeah, I've been throughout my career a little bit over 16 years now, but always in learning and development and always evolving and learning.
You can't help yourself but say yes to everything, and it leads to amazing things, it sounds like.
You know what? At this point, I'm having to say yes to some things, and I'm also have to learn when to set boundaries and when to say not yet, or let me get you the right person who's going to help you out. But yes, as I was growing, yes, for sure.
I think that's a really powerful piece of one career advice is just to be able to say yes and put yourself in those uncomfortable scenarios to learn. And I also think what serves you so well now in your current role is the fact that you came from the front line of this industry, right? You actually know the instructional design. You have, first user experience brought in. So now when you're looking at this from more of a leadership role, you're actually calling and seeing more of a holistic, experience. I think that's very helpful. And certainly the best L&D leaders we've seen have that, boots on the ground experience, which is really helpful. I wanted to kick things off here. Now you're in a new role. You've transitioned into this. We know there's a fair amount of this going on, especially in current state where folks are. There's rifts happening. There's reinvestments happening. There's reorgs happening. Folks are changing, different companies. And you may be plopped into a scenario or pulled a remit of something that you weren't really ready for, or it's a brand new org altogether. Talk us through just a little bit of your advice for okay, how do you assess taking a new role, where the heck things are, what to prioritize, like how you wrap your head around that whole process?
It's been very interesting. So I'll start with that. I will say the first thing is make sure you're giving the space to learn and acknowledge what everybody has done until you got here. There's a lot of work and a lot of hard work that's being done until the point that you come in as a new leader. I would say that's the first thing. And making sure that you're making the time to connect with each of your team members and listen from each of them, their perspective on where we are and where we could be and what can we improve together, right? The second one I will say as equally important, meet with your leaders too. Get from your leader the sense of what they see as success at the end of the year. What are the top 1, 2, 3 priorities that they really want you to hone in and jump in right away? Because when you come in, I think the first reaction is, oh my God, there's a lot that needs to be done. But then that's the moment that by listening to the team, by listening to your leader, you are able to assess and then prioritize where can I make changes or where can I help support, where is going to have the biggest return the quickest, right? And what things need to be done at a short term period versus a longer term period. Also being acknowledged of where your team is at and how you lead your team and work with your team to get to where you need to go. So listen from your leaders, get priorities from them, and then learn from your teammates and get their feedback and get a sense of where they are as well.
So once you get that initial pulse check done, let's say we have some insight from leadership on what's a priority, where the business wants us to be focusing. We get some sort of bottoms up feedback from our team members or maybe our direct reports who are sharing what it's been like thus far. Let's talk about some of
Mhm.
those in-flight initiatives. Could be a piece of technology that's been there, is a little lagging, an initiative that was sort of half launched at some capacity, kind of abandoned and started back up, and some various state of being implemented. How do you think about kind of maybe righting the ship or like making sense of that and then figuring out how to be action oriented, but also like getting to the root cause of some of that stuff? I think this is something we hear very often is the in-flight
Mhm.
projects.
I inherited a couple of in-flight projects. So I think the first thing is, again, understanding. You don't need to get to the level of detail that you might want to because there's time constraints in it too, but understand it well enough and talk to the team members involved in the project to see what do you think and you agree on the pace that we're going or the direction that we're going, and where do you know that you can come in and make tweaks without disrupting the project so much. So I think that that's a balance there, right? You might have done it differently, and that's okay, but maybe their way also works. So how to make sure that we are making adjustments and guiding the team without disrupting the project and the flow as well, unless it's something detrimental that you really need to step in and make. I'll give you one example. Our teams are always willing to help, right? I think that's a trait that we have in learning and development. Sometimes we just want to say yes to everybody. We want to help. We are working on implementing a technology, and they ask us to implement it in a reduced timeline for a specific pilot. We all analyzed the project. The team said, yes, it's doable. But as we were going to, the scoping needed to be done further. And we realized the time constraint was too short. The time was too short. So nobody wanted to make the call. Nobody felt comfortable. That was one that I will tell you, it was a little bit disruptive, but I had to say, let me make the call. It's okay. It's okay to extend the timeline because we want to do it right too. It's not that we want to do it perfect, it's that we want to do it right. And sometimes the time constraint will be real, and we need to make sure that we're making adjustments for the sake of the team and for the sake of the success of implementing a piece of technology the right way.
Okay. So recognizing and being like some candor in what's realistic for time
Yes,
frames,
yes.
especially if you're inheriting something that may have been unrealistic to start.
What's realistic? What's the time commitment of the team members involved? Do they have other priorities that might be competing that we need to take a look first and get support? Bring them either the resources to support them or help them reset priorities and having conversations with the business to reset those priorities.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Now, how about the inheritance of technology that's in place, let's say post implementation,
Mhm.
but maybe is underperforming from like a utilization standpoint or an adoption standpoint? Like it's on the tech stack, it's contracted, it's being paid for, and the adoption rate's not where it wants to be, but there isn't necessarily an active implementation of that. So first I'd love to
Mhm.
unpack like you coming in as a new leader, how do you think about like that evaluation of understanding that piece of technology on the stack? And then we can kind of talk around like what you action off of that. But I'm trying to think about
Mhm.
how a leader may identify and point to this and then see if
Mhm.
this is an initiative that might have buy-in.
I will say first assess your tech stack, right? what do you have in place? What is each tech stack trying to solve? Are they complementing each other or are they competing with each other? Because we see that too. We bolt in because we inherited and now we have competing platforms, and that's why you're not seeing the adoption that you might need to see. So beyond that, then I'm gonna go more tactical, right? How many licenses do you have for each of the tech stack? And then I will say partner with your vendor there and determine, okay, what is the utilization rate on each of these tech stack? Because I can tell you, after seeing what the tech stack is in place and seeing the utilization rate, we cannot determine, is this still something that we need, or do we need to double click on that utilization rate? It could be that the tech stack was the right tech stack, but we didn't do a good job of marketing the tech or reinforcing the usage of the tech with the learners. So I think that's where first look at your tech stack, determine what's complementary, what's conflicting, right? And then do a double click on the usage and adoption of the tech. Are we getting what we need out of it? And then double click down. Why are we not getting it? Because sometimes we tend to blame the technology, but it might not be the technology. The issue is that we didn't do our part on the people side to adopt the technology.
Can you speak a little bit more around how you're measuring or getting the data points on utilization? I mean, obviously there's tools out there to help with that, but those don't always exist in every organization. So just want to double click on the utilization itself and like how you're kind of gauging that.
So I'll tell you, because we're building our measurement team now, we have limited resources, but I think this is where we really have to leverage the partnership on those technologies. And I could tell you the first measure of utilization, it sounds basic, but sometimes we have to start there, right? The first one is, did they log in for the first time? That's my first one. Check. That will be my first success. Check. The second one is, did they return? And what's the frequency of that return based on what we said the frequency should have been? And then from their understanding, are they seeing value in what they're either consuming or what process they might be doing within the tech? So those are some of the details. I would say that the utilization rates and anything in terms of interacting with the technology, I will ask our partners to help us with that type of data. And then any data related to the quality of the technology or the quality of the content that we might be deploying through it. We like to do focus groups internally. So we will do focus group or we will do simple surveys to start gauging the engagement of the team, of the end users. Are they seeing value in it? Are they getting it at the level that they need to get it? What are some of the barriers or constraints that they're seeing for maybe asking those who have never logged in? Ask them, what was the barrier for you to never logged in or to not return, right? Was it a time issue? Was a login issue? Was it that I just don't see value in it issue, right? There's no motivation around it and there's no accountability around it. So I would say the quantitative part of me, the efficiency, I would say, getting that data from the vendor on the utilization and then checking internally on the qualitative side with the actual end users and sometimes their managers.
Mm-hmm. We're getting in the weeds here, but I think this is precisely what would be valuable for our audience and this type of questions we get very often. Okay, so we have the sort of anecdotal components for the users. Putting that aside for a moment, let's just underscore this vendor-partner relationship. I don't know that this is brought up and utilized as a lever enough. As a vendor, we are in the business of making sure our end customers are successful with our platform. And there's often a disconnect there where I think as a customer, we don't think we can ask those sort of open-ended questions and sort of invite them, to your point, to partner with us in finding that level of success. Not just the quarterly business review or the annual review, but actually having a business discussion about our usage and what this looks like and revisiting. If you're new to this role, like you're stepping into a new organization, or maybe you're just trying to optimize an experience, it sounds like your suggestion is let's go to the vendor and ask those questions. Like, can you help me understand this? Like, tell me about the login pieces. Tell me about what product usage and analytics you have on your side. What are you seeing from my team? Here's what we could find on our side. What other questions do you typically like to ask vendors in that process of getting a gauge for where we are utilization wise?
I would say also challenge my assumptions, right? I will ask them to challenge my assumptions or my needs or my wants, because I might be asking, I'm making this up, for an 80% utilization on the employee base. They might come and say, hey, Yasmin, that's great, but best practices in working with organizations similar to yours might be that it's actually at a 70%. I'm okay, that's valid. So I would say challenge assumptions, be a true partner. I think that we have vendors who are transactional vendors, and that's okay. But sometimes we need vendors who become partners, who become an extension of our department because we have reduced resources internally. And I will say, ask them. The worst thing that they can say is no. But what if they say yes, right? to your point of we want mutual success from the vendor side, they want us to adopt it and create and buy more licenses and continue a long-term relationship. From our side, we want adoption as well from an end users and see the value what we're creating for them. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. We just need to support each other and see each other's at points at equals, even though we're still the client at the end of the day, but we're partners in it. They bring thought leadership and expertise that we don't have sometimes because they're being exposed to other clients that they're supporting. So the worst thing they can say is no. But what if they say yes?
I'm so glad you brought up that last point around thought leadership and what we would consider best practices, right? By definition, those vendors are seeing a bunch of organizations solving this particular problem or value prop, hopefully across their entire customer base. So again, by definition, they may see patterns that me as someone who's just only inside of my internal org doesn't have access to. And
Yeah.
it's almost like market research, right? It's almost R&D to understand what's going on out there. What am I seeing? And I do find that the majority of best practice information tends to fall on the top of funnel, like sales and marketing content, to get them in the door to buy the software.
Yeah.
Doesn't do a good job of making its way down the funnel to the execution, the implementation, and ultimately the success, the ongoing usage and driving of the adoption. Your vendors are excellent at being able to surface what they think the jobs to be done of their customers are, the best practices of these different solutions. Ask them the question of like, hey, we're here. Listen to the initiatives we have internally. Do you have resources for this? Do you have another customer that looks like this? Any other thoughts or best practices that you could maybe share to help me in that? Again, that's what partnership looks like, in addition to things like challenging assumptions. I think that's really, really helpful.
And I will add to that, even when you are trying to look at a new tech or you are trying to find a new solution that you might have not done ever in your life, ask those partners to show you, best practices, data from other places, because what they're able to show you for you to build your business case is the art of possible. And sometimes even showing the art of possible opens the door to even trying it and getting buy-in internally. So yeah, I would say challenge them too and ask them for clients, not just the happy clients, the clients that maybe not were not that successful, because you can learn from both ends.
Yeah. And you want to be a case study for them because that means that you're successful, and they want you to be a case study because it helps them get more customers that look like you, right? So
Correct.
if you are going in with that mutually beneficial angle where, yes, we are paying for this thing, but we do need your help in getting there, and vice versa, that's where we have some like a symbiosis going on here that I do find is missing very often in the tech space. So helpful to have those kind of like candid discussions. With the survey side for the end user and groupings, this is a slippery slope, challenging one, right? Because you've got, and I want to unpack a couple of these elements. We've got one, the laggards, the folks that maybe are just not using the tool. And to your point, is it because it's not helpful? Is it because they don't want to? Is it a gap in process? Is there an educational gap that's there? Like, that's what I'm trying to, do you segment them into cohorts and say, these are laggards, these are champions, these are middle of the road? Like, how do you think about that to make sure that the data is accurate and helpful?
We do segment them just to make sure we're clear and we're not muddying the water, especially if we had early adopters who are very into it. We don't want to come and show such a polarizing person in the same focus group. We send the same survey to everyone. We start there. But as we start getting the data, we understand where we want to double click and have possibly a focus group. Then we do segment them into the most engaged team members versus the ones that were not so engaged. And the reason for that is also learning from them what might work. So what worked well for the ones who got really engaged. So make sure that we're doubling down there, we're reinforcing there. But what didn't work, what were some of the barriers for the ones that didn't engage the way we expected them? Then we have a good information directly from the end user that we can implement later on to either reduce or remove those barriers and help others coming after them adopt what we're trying to adopt, or change what we're doing. Maybe they had valid reasons and something in the process was fully broken or the content was not landing the right way. So we make adjustments. Then we had even the right audience for the process of the content that we were putting out there for them. So it just helps them separate them because you're going to have polarizing views. So it helps understand what really worked and then what not so well.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. The cohorts are very helpful there.
Mm-hmm.
The peer group, that's a new one. We haven't heard it in that language. I'm sorry, peer group or focus group in that language. How does that materialize for you guys? Is that like an in-person like event? Is it more of something on like, yeah, how's that structuring? Just curious.
So usually are virtual because we have team members across the states. So we make sure that we have somebody, and this is a piece that we're evolving. So we partner with our HR analytics team to conduct some of these focus groups. The first thing is make sure we have two people on the focus group running the focus group. One who's mainly observing and taking notes, and one that is moderating. Usually this might be a pet peeve, but I want to make sure that whoever is asking the questions and in the room with them, they're not close to the project because they might be bringing a bias into the experience with them. But it's mainly a conversation. We have this set of questions related of areas that we want to focus on. For example, what worked well for you? What didn't work so well? What made you come back to the platform? Value, where did you see the most value? What would you change in it? So we get very tactical in the type of questions so we can get some correlation and understand better what was going on from their lens versus what could be improved. And it's usually small groups, right? 5 to 10 people, no more than that, because then you have people observing and not giving any feedback during the session. And you don't want it's a focus group, so you don't want to call out anybody. You just want to make sure whoever is invited that they want to be there and provide their feedback, but also that they actually provide the feedback and not just become a silent partner in the background, just listening into everybody else talking about their experience.
Yeah, you want to be an opt-in, community there. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Very helpful. All right, so we're assessing our existing tech stack. We're figuring out what needs consolidation, what could be removed. For those that need optimization, we're doing kind of deep analysis. We're thinking through where the gaps are. We're identifying those gaps. We're getting the feedback from the laggards who maybe are not using the tool. We're trying to understand the ones that love the tool, and we're trying to make decisions about those pieces of technology. So as we're thinking about change management here, on this stage, before we get to any kind of new initiative or new technology, talk to me about how you're thinking about the decisions that get made, right? So maybe we say, okay, we're going to keep this piece of technology, or we're going to keep this initiative in place, but it needs some work, right? And we've identified what that work looks like. It's usually around education, adoption, learning in some way. Tell me about like the framing of that, how you decide what tool you're going to employ to drive that adoption. Like, how are you thinking about, like, once you've identify what it is, how do you know what to do to help fix it?
Okay, cool. That's a loaded one, Sean. All right, let me start by saying first that tech is the enabler of a solution, it's not the solution. Okay, let me be very clear there. The tech is only helping support solve a piece of a puzzle, it's not the wholly support. So by saying that, I mean we should not be leading with the tech. We should be leading with the challenge that we're trying to solve, or leading with the strategy that we're trying to put in place to move something forward. So with that being said, I love that you mentioned change management. That should be an overlaying of anything that we do. Any technology, any AI, we haven't even talked about AI, but any piece of technology or any new process has a person involved behind the scenes. So we need to make sure we're catering for that person. So what I would say is once we identify what we need to fix, let's say it was low adoption because there was lack of awareness that even the content was available to the employees. Again, take a change management lens through it. Are we resetting and doing a campaign around it? Are we just doing a soft launch again and validating that it's still the right thing to keep? So let's say we're resetting, we know it's the right thing to keep, we're doing a full campaign launch. From a change lens, first is our team aware of it? Sometimes we forget that our team is also going through the process, either as end users or as supporters or both. So making sure that we're identifying who our business partner is for the process, who our team members need to be involved from our own department and our boundary team members, and then identifying the managers and the end users of that specific solution that we're putting in place. Why I say that? Because sometimes we overemphasize on the end user or overemphasize on the business partner because they are the ones who came with a request. And we forget that our team also needs to be aware of everything that is going on. And the manager of that end user has a big pull in that end user's day-to-day operations. So the first thing is identifying the people involved, the stakeholders, if you would, involved in the project, and then understanding what do they need to be aware of, how do we build that desire for them to adopt what we're trying to adopt, what tools and processes need to be in place to help them, to enable them to adopt the tool, and then what's the right cadence of that communication to them, of us reaching out to them to make sure that they come and adopt the tool or take the training that we want them to take. But we have, from a change perspective, we have to take them through a journey, right? It's not, hey, Sean, you signed up for the training today, go take it today. Sean is like, I didn't know this was coming. Why am I even assigned to this? What do I need to do? I don't, So out of the gate, we're putting you in a spot that you were not aware, and now you're being forced to do something. I will imagine the motivation there's going to be very low. Instead of saying, let me talk to Sean's manager first. Hey, Sean's manager, this is coming. This is the benefit to you, and this is the benefit to your team member. These are the tools and resources we're going to have available for you to support them. More to come. So now your manager is aware. Now your manager say, hey, Sean, by the way, this is coming. More to come. So now we start building that awareness, and we start building up to the desire before we even show you the piece of training of content. Likewise, as you go through it afterwards, how are we helping you, Sean, and your manager reinforce what you just learned? Or reinforce the adoption of you coming back to this technology and continue to do the tasks that you're supposed to be doing. So it's leading up to the adoption and sustaining that adoption after the fact, but making sure we're communicating with each stakeholder through the lens of their benefit and what's their role in making it a success.
Would love to know how you think about tackling the folks who actively object to the process or initiative or piece of technology. They know it's coming, so you let them know it's coming. Their manager reinforces it's coming. You need to do this. This is why. They disagree with the why. They know they have to do it, but they are actively thinking that this is going to make their job harder. They have some other assumption, and we're trying our best to paint the picture. And for the business case, it does work. That's why we're doing it. How do you think about that? Because this is something that comes up fairly often in these initiatives. You just have people who are just going to be avidly against this concept, despite our best change management efforts.
Yeah. Well, let me first say, and I learned that the hard way a long time ago when we were rolling out training to thousands of people, we're never going to make everybody happy. And we have to be okay with it. However, when we have identified maybe vocal team members, sometimes it can be a very vocal person that has influence on others. When we have identified the barriers that they are calling out, I would say partner with them early on. Those naysayers, they are the ones that you need to partner early on and understand from their lens what they think it won't work. Because if you meet them in the middle and try to adjust with their input what you're trying to do, more likely than that, I'm not saying it happens every time, Sean, but more likely than that, sometimes the people that are the most against it, when you involve them early in the process and you show them that their feedback has value and you are incorporating their feedback, they're more likely to be the ones turning and becoming champions for you. But you have to engage with them early. You have to make sure that they feel part of the process and they have a voice in the process.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. That has certainly been the value lever that we've seen. They just want to feel like they're a part of that, and the simple having a voice in the room. So I think that's a great call out, just reinforcing that again, that those naysayers, if we know them, they're vocal, or we can identify them as early in the process as possible, getting them involved and helping craft or add feedback in some way. It's hard to call the thing ugly if you helped create the thing, or at least
exactly
knew it was coming, and then were able to voice your comments, and some version of that was brought in, you felt heard, and you felt like you were part of a team. Again, that's not a full solve all the way around, a catch-all, but it's probably the best that we have in terms of making them feel appreciated and part of the team.
Yes, you never know, they might become your champions, so don't discount them.
Absolutely. Excellent. Okay, so we're covering kind of like that what we've adopted, what we've sort of brought in and inherited. When we've recognized the new technology or the new initiative that we want to roll out and the new thing we're trying to solve for, what additional things would you layer on here that we haven't covered so far? Like in terms of, this is now going to be like a brand new launch. We're not necessarily looking at gaps to figure out where it hasn't been adopted, but we're trying to proactively anticipate that this new thing's coming out, and we want to make sure the adoption is going to be there so we don't have a similar situation with the existing stack.
I will say what I shared before is making sure that you have a robust change management plan in place. I could not reinforce the importance of it. You have to bring people along. Beyond that, I will say make sure you have a plan to capture the data that you're trying to achieve. Like define what success looks like for this relaunch or adoption or reinforcement of the platform, right? What does success look like? And make sure that you are measuring frequently to make adjustment where needed on time and not waiting a whole year again to assess that it went well or not. So I would say don't overextend on the measurement, but have a couple, 2 or 3 metrics that you're gonna make sure that you're checking once a month or every 2 weeks or once a quarter, just so you can keep a pulse and adjust where you need there. And I will say also communicate the wins and communicate the areas of improvement as you go, because the data is going to be telling you that. Beyond that is make sure that as you communicate, you are don't be afraid to make a pivot. Sometimes our best efforts, when they don't get realized the way that we expected, and that's okay too. It's okay to pivot halfway. If we're seeing big changes or big challenges that we're still not able to address beyond our best efforts, it's okay to pivot. And it's okay to use the data and the insights to determine, okay, we really need to adjust here and move in a different direction because it's not landing the way we thought it will. So I would say, besides the change management plan and getting your success metrics in place, be open to pivot because the data is going to tell you where you need to do it.
This is part of a project that I believe you were involved with before. I'm sharing my screen here for those folks that are viewing this on video.
Yes.
I thought this was a really beautiful sort of visualization of this, and I think this is sort of outlining what you covered here. I just want to make sure. I know you did this with Megan Torrance and Matt Jertson from I think it was an ATD session, and it was really around just like the project management rollout of one of these new initiatives. I'm trying to make sure we fill in the blanks for anything that we haven't covered here. So it sounds like you talked about the, who's owning this project, why are we doing this, what are those timelines? You mentioned the other business partners and sponsors we're going to have across and adjacent to the business. Why, from an outcome standpoint, that we're really rolling this out. I thought this business section was also something we didn't necessarily cover explicitly here. What else from here do you think jumps out to you in this lens when we're rolling out that new initiative from scratch?
So that business part is critical. That's part of the value that the technology is going to bring, because sometimes, again, technology is an enabler. So technology will become part of your business case. So what is the value? What are you trying to achieve that by having that technology in place is going to help you either achieve it better, faster, or more efficient? Um, so I would say that this canvas was designed to really think through the process from a technology standpoint, from a business standpoint, and from a change management standpoint. Questions that you should be asking yourself before you start a project, and questions that you should be asking yourself that are going to feed into a project management plan, into a change management plan, into even identifying your stakeholders early on, especially around dependencies, because most of the times our team members are a reduced department that we might be relying on IT, on cybersecurity, legal, on HR. So making sure that we take the time to really flush out all the stakeholders that need to be involved early on helps us set the tone for the speed of the implementation, and the people that need to be involved and resources and budget that you might need to get through it. Again, it's helping us really think through the different elements before we jump in. Because a lot of the time, sometimes the technology has either been chosen for us, so we don't have a say, or we come halfway through it. So we are kind of scrambling halfway there, either fighting for resources or fighting for time from others because we didn't engage them early on the way that we could have.
To your point around the naysayers and the laggards, right? How involved can we get them in this process? Maybe we're doing this portion ourselves to sort of set the stage and project manage, but if we can get them involved and understand that this is how we're thinking about this, we're thinking about capacity, we're thinking about ownership, we're thinking about, what success is going to look like. We're anticipating some of those constraints and barriers. I thought this was just like a great visualization for folks to do as they're managing, but also to share with the team members to go, look, guys, we're not just like rolling the dice and just picking a thing randomly here off the menu. There's a reason for this. There's a method and a structure that we're going to implement. And I feel like there's also like, this is kind of an insurance policy for the team members who feel like this might be dropped down on them, that there's some thoughts in this, and they may be able to communicate and feel sort of bought into this process as well.
And I think I like what you said, Sean, because I think as you start showing sometimes peek behind the curtain and show the thought process behind it, that builds confidence in others that you're going to deliver what you're saying you're going to deliver, right? It might not feel fragmented because they're on the end user side. You're giving them a peek behind the curtain, showing them that there was a method to the madness behind the scenes. And it was a well thought out method. And this is how we're laying it out for you. So please give me your feedback. My leader loves to say co-creation, and I think it's great. It's true. They're co-creating with you. You are guiding them, but they're co-creating with you. They're guiding you from their business lens or from their end user lens. You are guiding them from your expertise of learning and development.
Create. That's a good word. I like that. Yeah.
I'm going to coin it for him, but yes. Shout out to Phil because he's the one who always making sure that we are co-creating.
Hey, that's the steal like an artist, right? Make sure
That's
we're
right.
pulling anything that we like and being able to repurpose it. I love that. Excellent. As we're kind of wrapping up here on the implementation side or just the stand up of change management, what other pet peeves, call outs, anything else that we've kind of drives you nuts or you've seen as being a problem that we might be able to help some folks kind of see around the corner, customizations that happen through the process that you're inheriting, things like that? What else comes to mind there?
You said the word customization. I was cringing a little bit when you said that one. I learned this the hard way too. Customization versus configuration. I'm not saying no to customization. And what I mean by it is when we receive something out of the box, sometimes it's not meeting fully the needs that we need. And that's okay. That's when we start configuring what the platform can do for us. It's never going to solve every single thing. It's going to solve probably 70-80%. When we start customizing, we should think of customization as the exception to when we're designing the end user experience, not as a rule. The challenge with customizing every single thing is that sometimes we make it so special to us that there's no way for us to scale it. There's no way for us to either scale it at the space, that the level that we need, or to sustain it with the limited resources that we have in house. So I would always caution us to not customize as much, but customize as the exception and not the rule. That's one. The other, it's not a pet peeve, I would say this is a lesson learned, is let's not discount the importance of including the managers of the end users in any process that we do. I would say they have the biggest influence in those end users and what their day-to-day operations look like. So Sean, I will tell you, if I come as a friend and say, hey Sean, you should take this training, and then your manager comes to you and say, hey Sean, you should take this training, who are you going to listen to first in the scope of your role or day-to-day operations? Probably your manager. He has influence over your promotion, over your growth opportunity sometimes, over, the projects that you're involved in. So managers have power and influence that can help us drive adoption in anything that we do. And not only drive adoption, but support those team members. So they're not only influencing them, but they're also providing the support, the time and the space they need to do what they need to do. So don't discount them. Those are early team members that we always want to make sure we include.
That's really good. Yeah, yeah. Also, like if you have naysayers or you have those other components, people are on some spectrum of their adoption journey or their their learner journey on whatever these different programs are. Calling them out alone without them knowing if this is something their manager's reinforcing, right? They don't know what to say often. They don't know where they stand on some of these things. So they need a little bit of guidance, and they want to add their opinion, but they also want to make sure that it's not going to make some waves. They also want to make sure it's aligned with what else is going on in the business. There's insights they might not have. Unlocking the manager in that mix is such a great kind of relational play because you're tapping into something that somebody they're working with every week, right? Where you're coming in as just this business function that feels like it's kind of out of left field. So I think that's really good general advice.
And managers also need to feel empowered and in the know, right? You want to make sure that you know what's going on, you know what's coming for your team members, so you can also be prepared to answer any questions or to support them through it. Right? It's also a preparation element for the managers to do their job more effectively as well.
Yeah. And then the last note on the configuring and customization standpoint, yes, that's something we hear very often with these larger rollouts of an initiative. Any other questions or frameworks when we're seeing a project start to get into that customization world where folks, usually the ones who want to customize, feel as if they're a special snowflake and their thing requires a deep level of customization that is unique in the world? There's always exceptions to these sort of things, but just guiding them through, not going, no, we're going to take the out of the box and like kind of ruffling feathers, but do you have any talk tracks or language around just getting them to shift to like, hey, this isn't going to be scalable. We need to prepare for that as well as serve your current needs?
I would say challenge politely, right? And say, if we look at your role or say your department and X department and X department, flip the conversation. Instead of asking, what are you different? Ask them, what's similar between the three? So help them identify what's similar between the three departments or what's similar between them to help them. Okay, yeah, we're not as different as we thought we were. So start thinking of what are the similarities that you see and have them identify those similarities. The other thing I will say is that we're not discounting them out of the gate. I would say from my perspective, it's let's try it. Let's try it first. Let's learn from it. Let's adapt and let's keep going. Let's iterate and keep going, right? Instead of customizing out of the gate, let's try what we have, let's get feedback and adjust where we need to adjust. Because now we're not making assumptions, right? We're testing it out, getting feedback, and then adjusting where we need to and not going into the level of customization. The other thing I will ask them at the end, if you're feeling a lot of resistance, is if by tomorrow you will be doubling your team, would you be able to sustain this process the way it is today? Most of the time they will say no. So that's sometimes a reality check for us too, determining the resource constraints that we might have.
And to your point about building in a culture of the willingness to pivot, if they know that you will shift if the scenario calls for it, maybe they'll be more inclined to try the shorter MVP, the shorter pilot, or the current version, knowing that if it doesn't fit, the organization will make an adjustment if needed.
And sometimes that opens up conversations that are different. They say, okay, this is where we might have an opportunity to standardize and make it easier on all of us to maintain.
Yeah, well said. As we wrap up here, Yasmin, we didn't really cover the measurement side of this. Anything else you would add in terms of best practices around from an ROI standpoint or just measurement of success? These things can be very slippery to measure. Be curious if you had any thoughts for the audience on that.
I will say a couple of things. First one is make sure that we were talking about effectiveness or impact, and our business is asking us for that. Make sure that we're talking the same language. Have them define what effectiveness means to them and what impact means to them and success means to them, because that helps us level set and set expectations with them at what can be measured or not. The other thing is start that conversation early on. Data should be planned for. It should not be an afterthought, right? How are we going to know that we were successful 6 months from now, 3 months from now? How do we know that we deliver on what we were supposed to deliver? And start the conversation from there. I'm a big fan of the ROI methodology. I'm not saying we have to follow the ROI methodology for every single project, but when we have high stake, high resource, high impact projects, it's important to have a robust measurement plan in place, making it practical to our world, right? Because we know sometimes we don't have the resources, but making sure we are very, very clear from the beginning how we measure success, from leading indicator metrics to the lagging indicators and the impact that we want to make to the business. So don't leave that conversation to the end. Bless you.
As we wrap up here, Yasmin, this is fantastic. We're going to link to all this in the show notes as well. Where can folks find you as we want to share any more of these best practices?
I'm on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, so please reach out. You can find me there. I'm also going to be presenting with Megan shortly at DevLearn, so looking forward to collaborating with her again. So yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to me.
Okay, great. We'll link to all those in the show notes as well so people can find you. Excellent. Yasmin, thanks again for taking the time. This was really helpful. We really appreciate this. I think people are going to get a lot out of this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Adoption Curve. If you've enjoyed today's conversation and want more content like this, I highly recommend subscribing to our newsletter where we break down insights, frameworks, and templates from our guests on each show. To access, go to iorad.com/newsletter. Also, make sure you subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. If you could, we'd also love it if you could leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed and got value out of today's conversation. The Adoption Curve is produced by iORAD, the tool that helps thousands of companies make interactive tutorials in seconds. They're shareable in all the tools you use every day. We'll see you on the next episode.